We all know the heartbreak in Spider-Man's story. But what if the heartbreak didn't stop at the screen? Because the women Spider-Man loved most, Mary Jane, Gwen Stacy, and MJ, weren't just fictional symbols of lost love. The actresses who played them, Kirsten Dunst, Emma Stone, and Zendaya, each lived through eerily similar pain in real life. Depression, public breakups, pressure of fame, emotional isolation. It wasn't just their characters who struggled. The parallels between the screen and real life are so uncanny. It's like these stories weren't just written, they were felt. Let's begin with the face of early 2000s Spider-Man romance, the original MJ, Kirsten Dunst. The original MJ's battle with fame and emptiness. Back in the early 2000s, Kirsten Dunst was everywhere. She was just 18 when she first appeared as Mary Jane Watson in Spider-Man 2002, stepping into one of the most iconic love interests in comic book history. Her MJ was fiery and ambitious, yet always emotionally adrift. She smiled for the stage and lights, but inside, MJ was quietly falling apart. Funny how close that was to Kirsten's own reality. While fans were cheering for her chemistry with Tobey Maguire and quoting the upside-down kiss, Kirsten was slowly buckling under the weight of something darker. She spoke later about struggling with depression during that very time. Not just a fleeting sadness, but something heavy and chronic. She eventually checked into rehab in 2008, not long after the Spider-Man trilogy had wrapped up. Tabloids were ruthless. They threw around words like addiction and meltdown, all while misunderstanding what was really going on. What she was dealing with wasn't some celebrity scandal. It was a quiet breakdown, worsened by fame, constant pressure to appear perfect, and never getting a moment to just be human. Her MJ in the films? Almost a mirror image. Think back to those scenes where she's trying to balance her acting career, dealing with tabloid rumors, feeling emotionally neglected by Peter. There's a deep sadness in her performance that doesn't feel like acting. In Spider-Man 2, there's that moment when MJ's looking out the window while Peter misses her show. Her eyes don't rage, they just sink, like someone who's used to being forgotten. It wasn't just character, it was a reflection. Kirsten later shared how acting from a young age and being in the public eye made it difficult to stay grounded. Constantly performing, always being watched, no real space to fall apart safely. Just like MJ, always under lights, but barely holding it together off stage. And that pressure didn't always come from outside. Sometimes it was internal, a voice telling her she had to keep going, had to be strong, had to make it all look easy. She once hinted in an interview that she never felt allowed to struggle in public, that the moment she slipped, it would be used against her. That kind of fear can keep someone emotionally locked up for years. And her connection with Tobey Maguire? At one point they dated off-screen too, but things fizzled quietly. No drama. Just two people carrying too much weight to hold each other up. After the trilogy, Kirsten took a step back from the spotlight. Fewer roles, more quiet. She talked about the need to heal and build a life outside of fame. Today, she's in a much better place. She's married to Jesse Plemons and is a mother, and seems deeply at peace with who she is. But back then, the heartbreak of MJ wasn't just cinematic. It was real, it was raw, and it hurt. Emma Stone, when a fictional death foreshadowed a real-life breakup. Enter Emma Stone, Gwen Stacy, in the Amazing Spider-Man series. The brainy, confident girl whose fate is one of the most tragic in superhero cinema. Her Gwen wasn't just Peter Parker's love interest. She was his emotional anchor, his intellectual equal, and tragically, his greatest loss. The chemistry between Emma and Andrew Garfield was electric. That spark? It wasn't just movie magic. They were together in real life too, and fans absolutely adored them. The kind of couple people wanted to believe in. They were playful, sincere, affectionate, and seemed to deeply get each other. But then came the heartbreak. On screen and off, Gwen dies in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it broke Peter. It broke audiences, and ironically, it may have foreshadowed what was coming next. Not long after the Spider-Man movies ended, so did Emma and Andrew's real-life relationship. Quietly, no drama, just distance, emotional, geographical, professional. Their careers pulled them in different directions. She became an Oscar-winning star. He dove into indie work and theater, yet the affection never seemed to fade. Andrew's expression watching Emma win her Oscar said more than words ever could. Pure pride, lingering love, maybe even a tinge of loss. In interviews, both hinted at the breakup without ever trashing each other. Respect remained, but the grief was there too. Grief for a love that was real but couldn't last, just like Gwen and Peter. Their characters were never given a happy ending, and neither were they. Both stories cut short by life, or fate, or maybe just the weight of being too closely tied to something that burned so brightly it couldn't sustain itself. Emma has since found happiness again, married, with a daughter, and thriving in her own way. But that chapter with Andrew, it stays in the air, like a ghost. What's haunting is how similar her character's ending was to her real love story, both full of promise and both ended with a fall. There's always been something raw about the way Emma played Gwen, like she wasn't acting, but remembering. You can see it in the scenes where Gwen and Peter argue. It never feels scripted, it feels lived. They talked over each other, laughed mid-sentence, cut each other off. It wasn't perfect, it was messy, but that messiness felt real. That's the kind of intimacy you don't fake. And when Gwen dies, and Peter holds her in his arms, the sob that comes out of him, it didn't just feel like Peter grieving Gwen, it felt like Andrew grieving Emma, or at least the part of them they knew was slipping away. Even years later, fans still revisit those scenes not just for the emotion, but for the reminder that love, when it's real, leaves something behind. Emma's Gwen wasn't just a loss for Peter Parker. She became a symbol of all the almosts, the relationships that were full of love, but couldn't survive the timing. And that's what made their story hit so hard. Because it wasn't exaggerated, it wasn't fantasy. It was heartbreak in its most human form. The kind where both people still care, but caring isn't enough. The kind where no one is the villain, and still, it ends. Emma once said in an interview that she felt safe working with Andrew, that there was an ease between them she hadn't felt before. That safety translated on screen, but it also made their off-screen bond that much harder to let go. Even after they split, they were spotted together occasionally. Not in romantic ways, but like two people who still knew each other too well to ever be strangers. And maybe that's what lingers about their story, the fact that it never really got closure. Much like Gwen's sudden death, their breakup left more questions than answers. It felt unresolved, and sometimes, those are the losses that stay with us the longest. Zendaya, the modern MJ, and the isolation that comes with fame. Zendaya's MJ is different, guarded, sharp, dry humor, deep thinker. And yet, behind all the sarcasm, there's this quiet sadness. She's the modern loner, always on the edge of things, even when she's in love. And that role seems tailored to Zendaya herself, because behind the global success, the Met Gala appearances, and Emmy wins, she too has been open about the loneliness and anxiety that fame brings. Zendaya started as a Disney kid, early fame, early criticism. Every step of her career was watched, judged, and dissected. She had to grow up in a world where even her most human moments became headlines. In interviews, she's opened up about how overwhelming it feels to always be on, about retreating, about guarding herself, about the pressure to say the right thing, wear the right thing, be a role model. And when you think about it, doesn't that sound exactly like the MJ she plays? Her version of MJ is always a little distant. She watches from the sidelines, reluctant to be vulnerable. But when she lets Peter in, you can see just how much she's holding back, and how much she feels. Zendaya's real-life romance with Tom Holland added another layer. Suddenly the world wasn't just watching Spider-Man and MJ, they were watching them. Every photo, every hug, every look, scrutinized. They've done their best to stay private, but the truth is, it's hard to live freely when you're always being filmed, even at the airport. Fame has its glow, but also its shadows. And Zendaya, for all her strength and grace, has spoken about burnout, about needing time off, about the emotional cost of constantly being available for consumption, on social media, in interviews, in film. It echoes her character perfectly. MJ in the MCU is a girl trying to feel safe in a world that constantly breaks her trust. She wants connection, but she's scared of what comes with it. Zendaya's brilliance is how deeply she channels that into her performance. But maybe, just maybe, she's not just channeling it, she's living it too. There's a weariness in her interviews sometimes, a carefulness with her words, as if she's aware that anything said can be twisted, reposted, turned into headlines. The way she holds herself, calm, collected, elegant, also feels like armor. And like MJ, that armor only drops when she's with someone she trusts. In moments where the cameras catch her unfiltered, a laugh with Tom, a quiet glance off stage, you can see glimpses of the real her beneath all the layers. Zendaya once mentioned how she worries about losing parts of herself to the character she plays, or to the image the world expects. That fear, it's not abstract, it's lived. Even her social media presence is curated with intention. Never too much, always just enough. It's the modern form of self-protection. There's an unspoken pressure to represent strength at all times, to be the role model, the trailblazer, the voice. But even the strongest need room to breathe. What makes Zendaya's MJ so compelling is that vulnerability, the kind you don't often see in superhero love interests. She's not just the girl next door or the damsel in distress. She's a layered person, dealing with fear, uncertainty, and insecurity, just like anyone. And Zendaya, in real life, reflects that. She stands tall but not untouched, confident but still cautious. There's a scene in No Way Home where MJ says, "If you expect disappointment, then you can never really be disappointed." That line hits harder when you realize it might echo what Zendaya has felt herself. She's admitted in interviews that letting people in, really in, is hard when you've been burned before. Just like MJ, she craves authenticity, but rarely gets to experience it freely. And maybe that's the real cost of fame, being seen by millions, but still feeling unseen. It's almost poetic. Each Spider-Man love story brought something iconic to the screen, but behind it, the actresses carried their own, very real heartbreaks. Kirsten Dunst was the bright red-haired muse drowning in quiet depression. Emma Stone lived the chemistry, the tragedy, and the silence of love lost. Zendaya navigates fame's glow and shadow, just like the guarded, brilliant MJ she plays. Spider-Man has always been about balancing power and vulnerability, strength and heartbreak, and strangely, so were the women beside him, both in the story and in real life. This wasn't just great acting, it was real emotion, shaped by real experience. So the next time a Spider-Man love scene plays on screen, watch closely. There's more than character in those eyes. There's history, there's loss, there's truth. Because sometimes, the saddest stories are the ones closest to home. If this video gave a whole new perspective to the Spider-Man universe and the women behind the mask of fiction, give it a like, drop a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. There are more stories like this, hidden behind the fame, beneath the spotlight, and they deserve to be told. See you in the next one.